Welcome back to RetroWheelsVault, where horsepower never dies. I'm RetroVault 4, your guide to the golden era of chrome and carburetors. Today we're cruising into 1972 with the Chevrolet Monte Carlo, a car so smooth it could charm the tires of a Mustang. Because modern cars forgot what muscle means. Here's a little gem from the Monte Carlo storybook. Chevrolet proudly called the 1972 Monte Carlo America's most attainable luxury car. It wasn't just a marketing fluff. This was Chevy's way of saying, hey, you don't need a bank vault or a country club membership to roll like royalty. The Monte Carlo brought luxury down from its marble pedestal and parked it right in your driveway. Picture it like this. If Cadillac was a tuxedo at the gala, the Monte Carlo was the sharp sport coat that turned heads at the neighborhood cookout. Plush interiors, long sweeping lines, and that signature Coke bottle body gave it an air of class without the nose in the air attitude. Chevy understood the assignment. Give working class Americans a car that felt like luxury without the luxury price tag. It was a clever blend of refinement and rumble where a burly V8 met wood grain trim and soft seats. The Monte Carlo didn't whisper elegance. It rumbled through dual exhausts. In short, the 72 Monte Carlo was proof you didn't need to own an old company to drive something that looked like you did. It was style, muscle, and accessibility all rolled into one very classy package. By 1972, the Chevrolet Monte Carlo started in its showrooms like it just got back from finishing school. The front end was dressed to impress with a brand new egg crate grille, a design nod that made it look like Cadillac's younger, sportier cousin who still knew how to have fun on a Friday night. The parking lamps ditched their old bumper digs and took up a new vertical residence on the outboard grille segments, giving the Monte Carlo a touch more sophistication and a whole lot more swagger. But behind that polished smile was the end of an era. 1972 marked the final year of the first generation Monte Carlo, a bittersweet farewell to the original formula that made it a standout among personal luxury coupes. The SS badge, once the brawny heartbeat of the lineup, took its final bow. In its place came the one-year-only Monte Carlo Custom, offering a refined twist with special suspension tuning and goodies borrowed from the late, great SS. Think of it as Chevy's way of giving the Monte Carlo a tux from its curtain call. Smooth, confident, and with just enough muscle under the fabric to remind everyone it could still throw a punch if needed. Under the hood, the 72 Monte Carlo was a buffet of big block flavor and small block finesse. Chevy knew its buyers ranged from Sunday cruisers to boulevard bruisers, so they served up an engine lineup that covered both moods nicely. At the base sat the 350 cubic inch 5.7-liter turbofire V8, a cast iron workhorse with 165 horsepower and 280 foot-pounds of torque, breathing through a Rochester two-barrel carb. It wasn't built to win races. It was built to make the daily grind feel like a smooth waltz. Step up to the 175 horsepower version with a Rochester 4-barrel, and suddenly your right foot had a bit more say in the conversation. For those who thought luxury should come with a growl, the 402 cubic inch 6.6 turbo jet V8 upped the ante with 240 horses and 345 foot-pounds of torque. It was like trading your Sunday loafers for steel-toed boots. But the real legend was the 454 cubic inch 7.4-liter turbojet, a cast iron brute with 270 horsepower and a mountain-moving 390 foot-pounds of torque. That thing didn't just purr, it announced itself like a thunderstorm on four wheels. No matter the choice, the 72 Monte Carlo had one mission: to make every drive feel like a rolling symphony of muscle and class. In 1972, the Monte Carlo decided to smooth things out a bit in the drivetrain department, almost like it traded in its dancing shoes for a fine pair of loafers. One notable change: the 4-speed manual was gone. Yep, no more row-your-own excitement for the purists. Chevy figured Monte Carlo owners preferred cruising over clutch kicking. The base setup was a 3-speed Saginaw manual, simple, dependable, and perfectly fine for getting from A to B with a little muscle car dignity intact. Pair that with the base 352 barrel, and you had a solid no-fuss drive experience that still had some growl under the hood. If you wanted to kick back and let the car do the work, you could opt for the 2-speed Power Glide automatic. It wasn't going to win any drag races, sure, but it shifted with the kind of lazy confidence you'd expect from a Sunday drive down the coast. Then there was the real star of the lineup, the 3-speed turbo-hydromatic 350 automatic. Available across all engines, it delivered buttery smooth shifts and solid reliability, a perfect match for the Monte Carlo's muscle in a tuxedo attitude. Whether you like control or comfort, the Monte Carlo made sure every gear change felt effortless and classy. Beneath the Monte Carlo's smooth exterior sat a chassis setup that was as refined as a ballroom dancer, but tough enough to survive a bar fight. Built on the G-body platform, which was technically the A Special version, it shared its bones with the 1969 and 72 Pontiac Grand Prix. This wasn't your run-of-the-mill A-body. It was a stretched-out, more elegant version designed to give the Monte Carlo that long, luxurious profile and that unmistakable grand touring stance. Later models would switch things up, but in 1972, this early G-body frame gave the car a distinct personality. Part luxury coupe, part boulevard bruiser. Up front, the Monte Carlo's double wishbone suspension worked like a well-rehearsed duet. Upper and lower control arms allowed each front wheel to move independently, soaking up bumps and road chatter while keeping that confident, composed posture. Coil springs and shock absorbers teamed up to handle the rough stuff, ensuring your coffee stayed mostly in its cup. Out back, coil springs supported the solid rear axle, ditching the old-school leaf setup for something smoother and more sophisticated. A set of 4 trailing arms, 2 upper, 2 lower, kept everything in line like bouncers at a fancy club. The result? A ride that was equal parts comfort, control, and quiet confidence. Inside the 1972 Monte Carlo, the theme was comfort meets class, with just a wink of attitude. Chevy didn't reinvent the wheel for this model year, keeping most of the interior trim the same as 1971. But honestly, when you've already nailed that rolling lounge aesthetic, why mess with perfection? One subtle change came in the upholstery department. Buyers could now opt for all vinyl trim with the standard bench seat, a practical choice for anyone who's ever spilled a milkshake mid-cruise. The optional straddle bucket seats, however, were where the real magic happened. They hugged you just enough to make you feel secure, but not so much that you'd call it a performance seat. It was more like being cradled by a confident jazz singer than strapped into a race car. The dashboard layout was pure 1970 style, clean, confident, and filled with shiny knobs that looked like they belonged on a home stereo system. Even the climate controls had that I run the show energy. No touchscreens, no digital nonsense, just honest mechanical simplicity that worked. In short, the Monte Carlo's interior was a time capsule of comfort and craftsmanship, where luxury met logic and every mile felt just a little more special than it had any right to. Out back, this year's Monte Carlo rode with confidence on a stout GM 12-bolt rear axle, the same kind of setup that muscle cars swore by. Depending on your taste and your wallet, you could get either an open differential or the almighty Positive Traction Limited Slip. The open diff was fine for casual cruising, but Positive Traction? That was Chevy's way of saying, let's keep both tires honest. It made for smoother launches and better grip when you really put your foot down. Think of it as a difference between dancing solo and having a synchronized partner who never misses a step. The 1972 Chevrolet Monte Carlo wasn't just a car, it was a statement, and that statement took up plenty of space. Stretching 206.5 inches from chrome bumper to chrome bumper, this Chevy had the kind of presence that made parallel parking more of an adventure than a convenience. At 76 inches wide, it practically needed its own zip code in a crowded parking lot. Standing just 52.9 inches tall, the Monte Carlo had that low, confident stance that whispered, I own this boulevard. And with a 116-inch wheelbase, it glided down the road like a yacht cruising calm waters, long, smooth, and in no hurry to prove itself. Despite all that steel, the Monte Carlo's curb weight came in at a respectable 3,359 pounds. Sure, it wasn't light, but that heft added to its charm. It soaked up road imperfections like a fine mattress and gave it that reassuring, solid American metal feel every time you shut the door. In a world of compacts and cookie-cutter sedans, the 72 Monte Carlo stood tall, well, long, as a proper Grand Touring coupe. It was elegant muscle with dimensions that said, move over, I need room to stretch my style. The 72 Chevrolet Monte Carlo was the kind of car that could charm you before you even turned the key. One of its biggest strengths was its balance of luxury and muscle. Chevy managed to blend refinement and raw power like a cocktail mixed by someone who really knew the ratios. The long wheelbase G-body chassis gave it a silky ride, while available V8 power plants made sure it could still flex when the light turned green. Inside, comfort reigned supreme, with plush seating and tasteful styling that made every drive feel like a first-class ticket down Main Street. But even this boulevard beauty had its flaws. The disappearance of the SS package meant true performance seekers were left wanting more, and while it had presence, it wasn't exactly nimble. Tight corners weren't its idea of a good time. Fuel economy was another sore spot. This wasn't the kind of car that passed gas stations without noticing. Still, the Monte Carlo's charm was undeniable. It wasn't built to carve canyons. It was built to glide, to impress, and to remind everyone that style and strength could live happily under the same hood. Weaknesses aside, it remained the definition of cool with class in the early 70s. And that, folks, wraps up our cruise to the world of the 1972 Chevrolet Monte Carlo, a car that managed to blend muscle and manners like a heavyweight boxer in a tailored tuxedo. It had the looks to turn heads, the comfort to spoil you, and the power to remind you that refinement doesn't mean weakness. From its long, graceful profile to its rumbling V8 heartbeat, the Monte Carlo was a rolling reminder that the early 70s still knew how to have a good time. Sure, it wasn't perfect. Gas mileage could make your wallet flinch, and its handling was more graceful glide than sharp corner. But honestly, who bought a Monte Carlo to slalom cones? This was about presence, pride, and pure American cool. So what do you think? Was the 1972 Monte Carlo the perfect mix of style and performance, or was it more show than go? Drop your thoughts down in the comments. I'd love to hear your take on this luxury cruiser with a muscle car soul. If you enjoyed this ride, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into classic steel, and as always, keep it loud, keep it classic.